Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Power of Perception Radio Network. Welcome to those of you who are new to what we do on the pro wrestling side of things. This is the pro wrestling channel of the Power of Perception Pro Wrestling Radio Network. And for those of you who are new, I just want to give a brief introduction. This is our 9th program. And we are certainly excited to have with us momentarily Bruce Prichard. You may know him as Brother Love. You may know him for his work behind the scenes as a producer for the World Wrestling Entertainment, now World Wrestling Federation in his heyday. Also, you may know him for the outstanding podcast, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, on the MLW Radio Network. And also, you may know him for the live event show that he's going to do with his Something to Wrestle With podcast co-host Conrad Thompson during WrestleMania weekend. Bruce will be joining us momentarily, and without a doubt, we certainly are excited to have his thoughts and opinions related to the world of pro wrestling, but from a perceptual perspective. If you are new to the program, just want to give a shout out to those of you who already follow us on social media. You can do that on Twitter at PO Perception to catch up with both areas of the network, the non-wrestling and the pro wrestling side. But I believe Bruce is with us now. Bruce, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you so much
for
taking time out of. Yes, I can, sir. Thank you so much for taking
good.
time out of.
I'm trying to get you on Skype, and it just wouldn't work, and at least you'd have better quality, but hey, we're here now.
Well, sometimes technology works, and when it works wonderfully. When it doesn't, it can throw a monkey wrench into things, and I'm sure with your experience, 30-plus years in a live-to-television format, technology not working the way you plan is something you're very used to.
Yeah, it's been known to have its moments.
All right, and so I'm sure that everybody listening knows who you are, but the real interesting thing, what was it that captured you as a fan of professional wrestling all those years ago? Was it a certain storyline? Was it a certain just interaction with the crowd? What made you realize, hey, this crazy business is for me?
Well, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, and my first exposure was when I was about 4 years old. And the Funks were the heroes out of Amarillo, Texas, where the wrestling, the television came from there. So I saw the Funks on TV and just fell in love. I fell in love with the business. It was wild, it was entertaining and exciting, and I decided right then and there that was something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
And you certainly have dedicated your life both in front of the camera and behind the camera to the sport. Now, this network actually was started out of something that I heard when I did a little bit of work on the independent level, and it's a phrase that stuck with me and has stuck with me my entire life. Perception is reality. So let's talk about the power of perception for professional wrestlers, men, women, and the people behind the camera. What is that power to transcend and connect with an audience?
Well, I think that phrase kind of goes for life. It's how people perceive you. That is their reality. So regardless of what it is that you may think of yourself or how you feel you come off, I mean, that's one thing. The reality is how other people see you and how they perceive you to be. So while you may think you're a charming, great son of a bitch, other people may look at you and think, wow, what an asshole. So that perception, whether it's accurate or not, is reality.
So let me ask an interesting question here. In your time, particularly behind the scenes, how have you seen people's perceptions of themselves cost them in their career, and how have you seen someone who owns who they really are and then brings it to life on camera catapult someone to that next level? Could you give us some examples on both sides of that coin?
Well, I can give you an example of myself in general, because when I went to work for the WWF as a young man, I was 24 years old and on top of the world. I was running a television studio. I was a top talent, making really good money. And I basically was of the belief in my head that I was untouchable and that I was the greatest thing walking God's green earth. The perception from other people was kind of like, wow, what a jerk, what an asshole, because I was very focus-driven, and I dare say that I didn't give a shit about other people's feelings or anybody else other than myself, and that came across as extremely arrogant, cocky, conceited, and that's not really who I was. And they took my motivation for doing things unlike what they truly were. My motivation for doing the things that I did was to get the best product, to be the very best that I could be. How I went about it, I could have been nicer, I could have been better, and I could have thought about how it affects other people a lot more. So my intentions were different than how people perceived me. And I didn't realize that until, too much damage had been done and I lost my dream job. And I had the ability to come back years later and try and correct a lot of that. But that takes a long time to change people's perception of you. And sometimes you just never will, because maybe you're doing a job or you're doing something that requires you to be the bad guy, requires you to give the bad news and to be the asshole, if you will. And people perceive that, well, it's just, that must be you. That must be who you really are, not understanding it's a part of your job and it's what you have to do.
And certainly I think a lot of it goes down to what we believe about ourselves kind of trickles over into how we relate with others. Have you seen somebody in the wrestling industry over the years kind of watch their own career flourish and then get that confidence, change their perception of themselves, and then make a lot of money and entertain people at a whole nother level? Is that common?
Well, yeah, it is. You have to be confident in yourself in order to be able to go out and perform at the level that talent does. And if you're not confident in yourself and you don't believe in yourself, then that's going to show through, and the audience isn't going to believe in you either. So I think that every successful talent has that trait about them. They have to believe in themselves. They have to be positive. And if you're not, you're going to die on the vine. So I think any successful talent, I think you're going to have to say, yeah, they believed in themselves and they were able to take a positive viewpoint of themselves and project that forward. I look at guys that through the years that second-guess themselves along the way, and some huge stars that would second-guess everything they did and never fully see themselves as great as they really were. And that was always kind of amazing.
Go ahead.
No, I said that just was always kind of amazing to me.
So here's an interesting dichotomy. I know we have a lot of independent wrestlers who listen to the program. I know we have a lot of individuals who are aspiring to that profession or other forms of entertainment. Where, in your professional and personal opinion, is the line between overconfidence and just enough confidence, and how can a man or woman who is interested in that industry walk that line appropriately?
I don't believe there is such a thing as overconfidence. You either have confidence or you don't. Now, if you allow your confidence to trick you into trying to do things that you're not capable of, that can be dangerous. But I don't think that being overconfident is a bad thing, and I think that works for you, because the more confident you are, usually the more successful you're going to be. And people that lack confidence usually lack success.
I'm going to relegate that to the recently announced Hall of Famer or future Hall of Famer this year, Kurt Angle. Certainly to be at an Olympic gold medal level, he had to be confident, but the transition into pro wrestling must have challenged his confidence a time or two, tying that also in with your program, Something to Wrestle With. He's on the poll this week as a potential topic. Did you get the chance to see him kind of grapple with that internal confidence, or did he come into the sport knowing he had something special and just looking for a way to apply it?
Well, he definitely had something special. He's the only Olympic gold medalist that has ever been in the sport, and he didn't get there for lack of confidence. So he had that coming in, and that was special, but it made him unique. And he took that confidence and he turned it into drive, and he trained his ass off and became one of the greatest of all time. So you got to make it work for yourself.
When you were in the situation of, and I think we can tell the story for anybody who didn't hear it, and if they haven't heard it, they can hop on over to Something to Wrestle With, which for me is one of the probably 2 or 3 wrestling podcasts I check out every week. And they can do that on MLWradio.com, right?
Exactly. iTunes,
all right.
Every place you can download a podcast, by God.
There you go. So here's an interesting thing. When you are in the situation of sharing with Vince McMahon and those who are in power at the time in the late 80s, the vision of the Brother Love character, and we'll let you delve into that story a little bit, did you have a vision for how that was going to come together before you did it, or were you just kind of throwing something and then, you know, the powers that be buy it, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, what did I get myself into here?
Well, it was my creation. It came out of my sick head. So I definitely had a vision of what I thought it could be and what I thought it should be. And I dare say it pretty much ended up there. So I was in a unique situation where it was a character I created. It was also kind of an alter ego of mine that I had done for years, whether I was traveling in the Mid-South with Eddie Gilbert and watching old televangelists on Sunday night, or riding in a van up in the WWF in between towns. It was kind of an alter ego of mine that I just felt this would be a hell of a character. You know, I hated my alter ego. So I thought, well, if I hated this much, everybody else will too.
Was there ever any thought, as now you are kind of merchandising the Brother Love concept over at Pro Wrestling Tees, which I think everybody listening to this better go over there, check out a Pro Wrestling Tees Bruce Prichard T-shirt. There's probably, close to a couple dozen now over there for folks to check out. But was there ever a thought of merchandising Brother Love back then, or was it a character that you felt could only be portrayed in a villainous way?
Well, I only saw him in a villainous way, and times were different then, and it was a situation that heels didn't have merchandise. People didn't buy heel merchandise either, and so, no, there was really never a thought given to that. And even now, which you can go to brucepritchard.com and see all of the T-shirts that are available from, Ribs 24/7, the Box of Gimmicks, I Used to Be Over. All of those things were just sayings, and they were a part of our show on Something to Wrestle With that we kind of threw out there, and fans have gravitated to and supported us. They've shown their support for the show by going over there and picking up a couple T-shirts, and it's been great. But it's kind of was born by the podcast and Conrad Thompson and I both being smartasses and kind of going back and forth with each other. So it's more of a marketing for Bruce, much more so than Brother Love. Brother Love was part of my life, and it was a great part. I enjoyed that time. And now is kind of a time for Bruce to emerge, if you will.
You mentioned it being a very different time in the 80s, how heels didn't have merchandise. Do you think in 2017, if we still had those lines where only the beloved were merchandise, we'd have more passionate reactions from fans, or has the landscape of the sport changed such that we couldn't put those lines back in the bottle?
The landscape of the world has changed. I mean, think about it. In the 80s and early 90s, everybody didn't have a computer. People didn't have laptops. People didn't have cell phones. People didn't have cell phones that then had internet. People didn't walk around with a portable device that they could get on the internet and buy something right now or go check out the latest news and what have you. It was a different time in general. So what the public bought then isn't what they buy today. They're much more educated nowadays. They have much more information that they have to sift through that will try and shape their opinion one way or another. And I think that we've lost our innocence in a lot of respects with the internet and the huge amount of information available. You can talk yourself in and out of a certain car, for example. If you want to go buy a car, you can go on the internet and you can read 100 reasons why that car is the greatest car in the world. But you may also find 101 reasons why it's the worst car in the world. So you lose that go out and try it for yourself and form your own opinion, because you've got so many other opinions out there that are going to tell you why you're right and or why you're wrong. So it's just a different time in the world. It's like you watch what is taking place right now with Donald Trump and the media. And the media does not know what to do with this guy. Because for so long, the media was able to frame their story. And now all of a sudden, he just bypassed the media. He put his message out on Twitter. He put his message out on Facebook. He got his message out in other ways other than the traditional media. And they're sitting there going, well, wait a minute. We don't want this guy. And we're not able to put our spin. We're not able to tell our narrative. What the hell do we do? And he was able to sway enough people to be elected into the most powerful office in the world. And that's an incredible thing that could not have been done 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That couldn't have been done because people relied on that guy in the box that they trusted, that brought them their news every night at 6. They trusted that guy to tell them the truth. And now all of a sudden you have many other avenues that can give you an alternative viewpoint. And
so then in theory, is it possible then to say for anything to get over, whether it's a wrestler, whether it's a baseball star, whether it's a politician, in theory then, is it finding a narrative that connects with a global, international, or localized audience that determines what people will buy, do you think?
Exactly. You've got to, and you've got to find that niche that is going to. You're looking for a majority, but you're looking for a group of people, enough people to support whatever it is, whatever the hell it is that you're selling. And how you do that and how you go about it, that changes every day. So you just got to keep up and stay in the game.
I assume that giving 30-plus years of your life to pro wrestling, deep down you're still a fan. Everything that is not evolving eventually dies, and everything that isn't going to die has to evolve. Where do you think 5 years, 10 years from now, we will see pro wrestling as a form of presentation have evolved to?
Well, I don't know, but I'm excited about the future. I'm excited to see what does happen. I think that with the ongoing streaming and everything that is available to people and the a la carte, if you will, choices that people have nowadays, you can see pretty much anything you want to at any given time anywhere. So that's going to change the business a little bit. I don't see as many live events or standalone live events taking place in the future as has been the traditional model for many years. I just see the world evolving and the consumer having so many different options in how they consume. It just continually changes. So I don't know. I don't know where it'll be, but I'm excited to watch and see where it goes.
The role of mixed martial arts and other forms of competitive fighting, what positive and negative aspect do you believe that has brought to professional wrestling as a whole?
Well, I think that it's brought some different eyeballs and people that view the sport in a little bit different way. And I think the negative as far as MMA goes is the ability to build a star. When you put two guys in a cage and you say, okay, go fight, it's difficult to plan for the future when you don't know what the hell the outcome's going to be. It's difficult to plan for the future when guys go in and they have potentially career-ending injuries every single night. So it's difficult to draw or to build a draw. It's difficult to build a star because on any given day, in any given fight, that star can be dropped in a second. And that's the downside to MMA. And they've attempted, they've built some stars, but as quickly as they built them, those stars have fallen quickly in how they've been beaten. So it's difficult when you look at Brock Lesnar's first match in UFC. He tapped out to a knee bar. Now, I don't give a shit who you are. If somebody gets you in that, you're going to tap out or you're going to lose your knee. That shit hurts. But perception, you want to talk about perception, you look at Frank Mir and Brock Lesnar, my money's on Brock Lesnar. He looks like he's just going to maul him, which he later did. But I remember watching it with my son, who was obviously a lot younger at the time, who just didn't get it because he had seen Brock Lesnar portrayed as this monster that just ran over people. It didn't ring true to him.
Speaking of perception and the importance of having something to fight for, obviously, in UFC, it's championships. In pro wrestling, it's a little bit different in the sense of the importance of the championship has been, in the mind of many people, not everybody, but downgraded a little bit. Do you think if there was a model in pro wrestling where the shine was put on the championship versus the stars, it would change the demographic of individuals that would be interested in pro wrestling? Or have we migrated to a place in pro wrestling history where the championship has less value than it did in, let's say, the 1960s, 1970s, and early 80s?
Okay, well, the perception that the championship meant more than personal issues is completely incorrect. Personal issues and stars have always drawn more than championships. And whenever, and that goes back forever. You built stars, and you built the star to face the champion. And what people were buying was not necessarily the championship, but they were buying their star, their guy, beating the champion. And I also dare say that, if you were to compare as far as drawing power, a personal issue versus a title match, the personal issue wins every time. People have always, whether it was termed that way or not, people always were more interested in storyline, and they were always more interested in the personal issues, much more so than you put titles to dress those up. And I get a lot of heat, on my podcast because I say the belt's a prop. It is a prop. It's an important prop, and it can mean something, and it should mean something. And I'm not demeaning a championship in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying simply that if you're talking apples to apples, and I've got a choice of a hot issue and two guys that have a great story, or a cold title match, it's all about the championship, I'm more interested in the storyline.
Why do you believe that the narrative of a certain segment of the wrestling fan populace, which I believe is much smaller, even though we're on the internet right now, I think the internet influence is much smaller than the majority of people would think that it is, but why has that group of people kind of vilified the changes in the business, whereas it seems as though the mainstream public is still willing to go along for the ride?
They're loud. They're loud. That's why. You take a look at ECW, for example, and people all yelled and screamed about how ECW was the greatest promotion in the world and this, that, and the other thing. If ECW was the greatest promotion in the world, guess what? It'd still be in business. The fact of the matter is there were not enough people to support it, watching it on television, nor was there enough of a fan base to go out and support it and buy tickets on a regular basis around the country and or around the world. So they had a very vocal fan base, a very passionate fan base. They were small, but they were vocal and they were loud. So it made it seem like, well, they were the greatest company in the world because everybody's talking about it. Not necessarily. The ones that were talking about it talked about it a lot and were very passionate about it. So the majority of people, I dare say, don't get involved on the online debates and that internet world of this is better, that is better. Here's analyzing, why would they do this? Why did they count 2 3/4 in that match? And in this other match, they went 2 6/8. What? It takes the fun out of it, I think. And I think there is a larger majority of the audience that wants to just sit back and enjoy the product for what it is and have fun, because that's what it's all about.
And another thing that's really kind of interesting, I think that same demographic has vilified a former boss of yours, obviously the most powerful man in professional wrestling, Vince McMahon, for being hard to work for. I'd love to know, from your experience behind the scenes, kind of take us into the mindset of what gets Vince McMahon truly excited. Is it a match that goes well? Is it two guys who go out there and surpass his expectations? What's his excitement point from your experience?
Waking up in the morning.
Really?
The guy wakes up and goes to work every day, and he works longer and harder than anybody else. He loves it. It's his life. It's his passion, and he likes to see a plan, come to fruition and come off without a hitch. But he enjoys it all. He loves it when a plan blows up in his face too, and he's challenged with having to change it or fix it. But as far as him being hard to work with, yeah, he's hard to work with because he's very demanding. But he doesn't ask anybody to do anything that he wouldn't do and that he hasn't already done. So, the guy's fair. I loved working with him because we constantly sparred. We had very different opinions on the business and went back and forth all the time. But he's challenging and very demanding. But if you can't hang, then get the hell out. Then you don't belong there. If you don't want to go in, if you think you want to work for Vince McMahon and it's going to be a lot of fun and it's just going to be fun and games all the time, wrong. It's hard. It's challenging. It's rewarding, and it can be fun. But at the same time, it can be it's hard work and it's a pain in the ass. I used to love when people who had never done it would talk about, oh, what a great life you have. You get picked up in a stretch limousine. You get driven to a private plane, and then you fly to the next town where you are. You get out of the limousine. You drive to a 5-star hotel. You're already checked in. You stay in a 5-star hotel, eat at all these great restaurants, and travel the world and see all these places. Here's what they miss. They miss you waking up at the crack of dawn and getting, after 4 hours of sleep, getting in that limousine with other people and start working as soon as you get in. When you get out of the limousine onto the corporate jet, you're joined by the chairman and resident crazy man, and you work. You work all the way until that plane lands, and you get in the next car, which, by the way, guess what you're going to do when you get in that limo? You're going to work. You're going to work till you get to that building. Oh, my God, but you get to go to all these different towns. Guess what you get to see in those towns? You get to see the inside of another limousine. They all look alike. You get to see the inside of the arena. They all begin to look alike. But you're staying in a 5-star hotel. After a while, it's a bed and a bathroom, and the food all tastes the same. But you know what you do when you finish with the show that night and you're in this exotic land? You get back in the limo, you drive back to the jet, and you get in the jet, and on the way from the building to the jet, you're talking about what you just did. And then you get on the jet, and you're talking about what you're going to do tomorrow morning. And you fly to the next town, you get another limo, and you go to the hotel that night. When you check in that night, then you have a meeting. And you talk about what you're going to do in about 4 hours from then. So it's not as glamorous as everybody wants to think. But it's hard work, and I loved it. I'm a gypsy at heart, so it was perfect for me. Some people, though, they can't hang.
So I'm curious. I mean, the perception that most people have of Vince McMahon and the whole operation is that he is a perfectionist and that he has a very tunnel-visioned view of how things are supposed to go. Now, if we go back to the genesis of the Attitude Era and the point at which the Austin McMahon storyline took off, the last big boom period, one would dare say, and Vince now is in front of the camera. Did you or anyone else associated to his inner circle see him be as critical of himself as the majority of the world sees him, or he's been typecast as being, of his other contracted talent? Was he hard on himself as a performer?
He was probably harder on himself than he was other talent. He constantly critiqued himself and usually would come back and not be happy with his performance because he would be thinking about 100 things that he could have done that he felt might have been better. So yeah, he definitely was hard on himself, and he was harder on himself and his kids than anybody.
And I think that's something that a lot of us lose, is that when you are that passionate about any art form, any presentation, it has to be consuming every part of you. We're entering WrestleMania season, and I've got a curious question here. You mentioned having to adjust things when something goes wrong. In your experience of the 20-plus years you've been in a position of power as it relates to the production side, has there ever been a WrestleMania season where to injury or something that was unforeseen, a main event story arc almost didn't play out, and or there needed to be a severe backup plan in case something wasn't going to go according to plan, or has that always kind of fallen into place organically?
No, we've had those situations. Steve Austin with his neck injuries, and Cena one year. Yeah, Undertaker. We've had a few of those where guys have gotten injured, and or you just get close to WrestleMania and realize they're not buying this story. They're not buying it. We got to change, and that's the beauty of live television. That we really didn't have that kind of flexibility until, I guess, 93, 94, once we started doing Monday Night Raw, and that became the main focus. When we were relying on syndicated television, our stories were laid out months and months in advance, and television was taped 3 and 4 weeks at a time, so you couldn't change. You didn't have that flexibility to change. Now they can change. If something happens on Monday, they can change it on Tuesday. So there's a lot more flexibility now.
It's an interesting psychological dichotomy to me, that one would think every moment of television time is worth, who knows, tens of thousands of dollars. I'm sure it's been broken down by some mathematician somewhere, but that at the same time the narrative from those in power would be go out there and have fun. How does a talent learn the delicate balance between taking the opportunity they're being given seriously and carrying that weight on their shoulders, but also enjoying the moment sufficiently so that it comes across on camera? I would think that's the hardest part of the job.
Well, when you're good, fun can be serious. You know, you can have fun seriously. It's not go out there and just screw around and whatever. It's go out there. If you have fun with it and the audience knows that you're having fun with it, it's a different feeling. And when you believe what you're doing, your audience believes what you're doing as well. So, I mean, you go out. I always gave the same advice, go have fun with this. Because if you make it your own and you make it fun, it'll be better.
Is there a perception among pro wrestlers, male and female more prominent than I think ever we've seen in history now, but that the approach to a character, the approach to how one presents themselves is left to, unfortunately now, the writing team and a group of people, and the talents themselves aren't proactive enough in bouncing ideas that would get them ahead? Or has that culture kind of changed to where it is more interactive than perhaps it used to be?
Well, I think that the process, and I haven't been there in 8 years, so for me to speak on their process now is unfair. But the process was one of, when I was there, where talent was heavily involved in storylines and their characters, because with their input and their comfort, the product would be better if they bought into it and if they understood it and they helped create it. I think that sometimes what happens is that talent becomes a little lackadaisical, and they think, well, it's not my job. It's up to creative to come up with something for me. When if that's all you're doing, that's all you're going to get, and that's as good as you're going to get. Versus, hey, what about this idea? What about that idea? They may not take your ideas. They may take one or two. They may take some of your ideas and use them for somebody else. But the trick is never stop pitching, and the trick is to continually reinvent yourself. If Undertaker didn't reinvent himself after all these years, he would not be nearly as popular as he is still to this day. So that was his ability to constantly recreate himself. And that's something I think that is lacking in some of the characters today who kind of become, I don't want to say lazy, because I don't think any of them are lazy, but I think that they become reliant on the writers and producers to just come up with something for them. And the producers and the writers, I think, would alleviate a lot of pressure on themselves if they involved the talent more and had more confidence in the talent to say, hey, come up with something, and let them go. Let them fall on their face. That's the best thing that could ever happen to a talent, is to fall on your face and die. Just, just go out there and shit the bed completely, because that feeling is something that I think everybody needs to feel. It only makes you better.
Well, when you've hit the bottom, you have two choices: quit or reinvent yourself. And reinventing yourself puts into perspective, hey, I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm not, limited to what I thought I was. I can be whatever it is that I want to become. And I think, to your point, if a guy is afraid to fail, then he's also afraid to succeed on some level too, because most successes come from learning to overcome failure, no?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I think that your most successful people in the world are those who have failed. You look at some of the richest people in the world. Most of them have all gone bankrupt at one point in their life. It's what you do afterwards and how you pull yourself up from that.
So you mentioned something really interesting, and that's that you've been away from the WWE culture for, I think you said 8 years. Of course, a small foray down for a couple of years to Impact Wrestling, but I don't understand. In 2017, why does the world not see you in some form in the wrestling business? Is that a personal choice, or is that more of a lack of places to put yourself, or is there a plan behind the scenes that nobody knows yet?
It's kind of a combination of both, and I found life without wrestling, and then I kind of get brought back into it with the podcast and everything. So I've always loved it. I always will love it, and I will always be involved in one way or another doing something. I love the business, and I love to be a part of it. But it's good to get away, and it's good to be able to step back and look at things from 30,000 feet and not be in that bubble 24/7. I was in that bubble for 22 plus years. And I said to someone the other night, I said, I've never lived in the real world until recently. And that sounds probably crazy to people, but I didn't live in the real world. I was on the road 4 days a week, every day, and I came home and did a quick stint as father and husband, and then I was gone again. So only, the last couple of years, really, probably 2-3 years, that I saw how the other half lived. And it's, kind of cool, but it makes you appreciate what you had, but it also makes you appreciate what everybody else has. And, it's kind of nice to watch your kids grow up and be a part of that, be able to go to their soccer games and be able to go to their wrestling matches and do that. So it's, to answer your question, it's a little bit of all the above. By choice, where I don't want to be immersed in something right now. That's not to say that my kids are graduating high school this year. That's not to say that couldn't change in a couple months or 6 months or a year. You never say never. But also at the same time, with something to wrestle with, the podcast, I'm having a blast doing that, and it's become very successful. and I'm speaking to a whole new audience that all of a sudden you go, hey, wow, there are people out there that are digging what we're saying and what we're doing, and that's a blast. And it's evident when I come home and I look at my email and I've got 10 new T-shirt orders, and I call every one of them. I call people. It's not just a marketing trick, say, hey, buy a T-shirt, Bruce Prichard will call you. I call them because it's feedback. I get feedback on what they think of the show. I get feedback on what they think of the shirts. And it's a small gesture to say thank you for taking the time and taking your credit card out of your wallet and buying something that threw a couple bucks in my pocket. It's not that hard to do. And when you look at the big scope, of things, it's cool.
It's also personalized market research, right? If you know that audience because you're talking to them, then you can serve them better than if you stick your head in the sand and go, well, this worked in 1992, and it's going to work in 2028.
Exactly. And I ask them. It takes 2 minutes, and they let me know whether they like something or don't like something. I appreciate it. But it's pretty neat to be able to talk to your listeners and be able to interact with them, and we're very interactive on Twitter. You can follow me at Bruce Prichard of the show, at Prichard Show, and Conrad Thompson at Hey It's Conrad. And we love to talk to our listeners and interact with them. It's fun. It's eye-opening. People aren't shy, especially on the internet.
If there was one life lesson that you learned from your 30 years or so in the wrestling industry that you wish you could disseminate to the mainstream public, just one thing that's like an aha moment, what would you say that is?
Have an open mind. Be open to try something else. Even if it's outside of your comfort zone, listen. Shut up and listen. Probably the best advice I could give to anybody. And that's been a hard one for me to learn.
People certainly should listen to Something to Wrestle With every Friday. Drops at noon. It'll make your weekend. I mean, I can't believe you guys are on episode 24, 25 right now, but these aren't some wimpy 15-minute podcast. There's like 75 hours worth of stuff over there, all for free, and you learn so much about human nature, not just wrestling, but human nature and the things that make somebody a star.
Well, we try. We're having a really good time doing it, and we're constantly. We do a poll on Twitter every Sunday. It stays up till early Tuesday morning, where we let our audience pick the topics. So we're trying to cover what the audience wants to hear. We take their suggestions for what topics they'd like, and then we throw them on a poll and let them vote. So it's interesting. I try to stay out of it because I don't want to sway it one way or another. Okay, I might have tried to sway it a couple times, but we just try to let the audience dictate and have some fun. And we've got a live show coming up in Orlando over WrestleMania weekend on Saturday night, April 1st at Back Booth, and we're going to do it right after NXT. NXT is taking place at the Amway Center in downtown Orlando, and our venue is 2 blocks from there. We're just about sold out. We've got, I think, maybe 30-some-odd tickets left, and that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of special guests, and it's going to be me and Conrad Thompson. Conrad will probably be drinking all day and in rare form, and we're going to do a live version of the show with questions from the audience and a lot of audience participation and some cool special guests. And it's going to be a blast because that's where you get that instant feedback from an audience that's there to see you. And I'm looking forward to it.
And I'll be honest, if I could get there, I would be at that live experience. I wonder, and you're a cutting-edge, leading-edge kind of guy. Would there be a way that maybe for folks who can't attend because of distance or whatever, that it could be simulcast on Skype for paying people who can't be there live?
We are not going to record it, so the only way that you can experience it is being there live. But we're going to take this formula, and we are going to tour it, probably do it around the big 5 WWE pay-per-views in the markets. And the cool thing about our show is everyone will be different because every audience will be different. And we feed off of the audience so much, and we have so many different topics to explore. And depending upon where we are, will also depend on the special guests we may have. So it's not like if you see, somebody and they do a one-man show or a two-man show or whatever, and like a comedian has the same set that they do from town to town. Our set, if you will, is going to be different every time. And we're just looking forward to it. We like the challenge, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm going to hit you with a curveball question now. There's probably a litany of folks that you would love to see at those live events around the country, maybe around the world, who knows, maybe you'll go international with it. But if you could bring back one person who's passed away for one night only, who would you want to share that stage with in that environment?
Wow, so many. Roddy Piper.
Right, he is a guy. Matter of fact, one of my favorite, just a personal moment that I remember, the WrestleMania 5. Maybe that'd be a good story to close with. The WrestleMania 5 Piper's Pit. Anything that people may not know about that particular whole experience for long-term fans who may look at that and go, I remember that. That was really cool. Anything that kind of behind-the-scenes peek to that whole Piper's Pit experience?
It was like herding cats with Roddy and Morton Downey Jr. And Roddy being the non-trusting wrestling guy and Morton being the kind of guy who was always in control, and them looking at a 25-year-old kid telling them what to do it just was interesting. And thank God they finally ended it. But it was just a balancing act with those two very unique personalities, because Downey was used to having his own show and being very controversial and controlling it, and Roddy was used to doing whatever Roddy wanted to do. And I was charged with ring them both in and make sure they do what we wanted them to do. We got some of it, but a lot of it was a runaway train.
And oh yeah, there's millions of people watching. No net, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In any event, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes remaining. I want to give you the opportunity to get all the plugs in, because people need to go get a shirt if for no other reason than because, hey, everybody has those.
All you got to do, all you got to do is go to brucepritchard.com and see all of our shirts. From Not a Rib to Ribs Rule, Ribs Still Rule, Ribs 24/7. We got boxes of gimmicks. We got I Used to Be Over. Hell, we even have a shirt that says I'm Over, no yob. You name it, we got it. Check it out at brucepritchard.com. Don't put a T in my name. Put one on your back. And if you're in Orlando, we talked about it, you can go to notarib.com and get tickets for our live event in Orlando. And check us out every single Friday. We drop at noon on the MLWradio.com network. And myself and Conrad Thompson, we pick a new topic every week. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Bruce Prichard. The show is at Prichard Show. And my host, Conrad Thompson, is at Hey, It's Conrad. We love your feedback, and I greatly appreciate you having me on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bruce. We probably got to do this again sometime. Maybe we can, after the WrestleMania experience for fans, the live show, maybe when you've got another one of those booked, we'll bring you back on. You can plug that. I can honestly say I've learned more in the last hour than I probably would go into a graduate course at some Ivy League college, and I know our listeners have too. In any event, thank you so much for your time, and continue to entertain us on something to wrestle with.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
All right. All right, and for those that are still here live, this is Scott Golden. You just listened to Bruce Prichard, Brother Love, whatever name you want to know him as. You listened to a graduate level of information all right here on the Power of Perception Pro Wrestling channel. This is the type of entertainment we look to bring you. This is the type of interview that we want to bring you, but we also focus on independent wrestling because that's the place where, well, for the most part, it all begins. People living their dream, people doing what they need to do, and we certainly are committed and connected to the idea of bringing you the best interviews we can with name talent as well as underdiscovereds. Also, our main network, the Power of Perception Radio Network, 350 shows strong there. We're going to get back to broadcasting over there. If this is your first time listening, a couple things you can do. Check us out on Twitter, @PO Perception, all the information related to this network and the good things that we do there. Also, you can check us out, or check me out, Scott Golden, at LinkedIn, Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching, the name of my parent company. And one thing is for sure, we will continue to bring you the best in underdiscovered talents from all walks of life. Keep us posted. Remember, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.